Welcome back everyone. We're going to be solving LeetCode 359 logger rate limiter. So we need to design a logger system that receives a stream of messages along with their timestamps. Each unique message should only be printed at most every 10 seconds, i.e. a message printed at timestamp t will prevent other identical messages from being printed until timestamp t plus 10. And all messages will come in chronological order. Several messages may arrive at the same timestamp. So we need to implement the logger class where logger initializes the object and should print message returns true if the message should be printed in the given timestamp, otherwise false. So this problem seems a little confusing, but it's actually pretty easy. So let's take a look at our example input. They initialize the logger and then they pass in the message foo with a timestamp of 1. So what does this mean? This means foo is not in our logger yet, so we can add it and then return true. And then the next time we run into foo, if that timestamp is not equal to, greater than or equal to 1 plus 10, or the previous timestamp plus 10, then we automatically return false. Otherwise, we can just return true. So the easiest way to do this is definitely going to be to use a dictionary. So we'll say self.logger is going to be equal to a dictionary. Get rid of some spaces here. Okay, so every call to should print message is going to pass in this object, a timestamp and a message. So we know, since we're using a dictionary for our logger object, we know that we are going to have an O1 access time. So let's just check to see if the message passed in our logger or not. So we'll say if message in self.logger, we're going to do something, right? Otherwise, if it's not in our logger, we'll do something else. So if our message is not in our logger, what do we have to do? Well, we simply just add the message, and then add the timestamp, and then we can return true. So we'll say self.logger of message will be equal to the timestamp, and then we can return true. Okay, perfect. So what about the case where the message is already in our logger? Well, in that case, we have to check if the previous timestamp, or if the current timestamp is less than or equal to the previous timestamp. If it is, we can return false. Otherwise, we can return true and update the timestamps. So we'll say if the timestamp is less than the previous timestamp, self.logger of message, plus 10, right? The next time we run into a message that's already in there, it has to be greater than the previous one plus 10. So if that timestamp is less than the previous plus 10, we can return false. Otherwise, we are going to update the message and the timestamp. Well, the timestamp. So we'll say self.logger of that message will now be equal to the timestamp that was passed in. So if we pass in foo, 1 in foo for our first one, right? We're going to hit this else block. We're going to return true. We'll add foo into our dictionary with a timestamp of 1. Okay, perfect. Now, the next time we run into foo is going to be here, 3 and foo. So we'll hit this block. We'll say, okay, well, the timestamp passed in is 3, right? That is indeed less than whatever our previous timestamp is of 1 plus 10, right? 3 is less than 11, so we return false right here. Okay, so the next time we run into foo is going to be 10. 10 is still less than 11. We return false. Okay, now we hit 11 with the message of foo. So now our timestamp is greater than the previous timestamp. It's greater than or equal to the previous timestamp plus 10. So we add it. We update the timestamp to 11. So now foo will be at 11. And then we can return true. And the next time we run into foo, if that timestamp doesn't have a timestamp of at least 21, we know we won't be able to print it. So let's get rid of this. Get rid of some spaces here, and we can run this. And it does pass the test case, so let's submit. Perfect, it runs. Okay, so what are the time and space complexities for this problem? The time complexity is going to be O of 1, right? We're using a dictionary. We're not doing any for loops in here. We're only doing some accessing, and that is always going to be O of 1 with the dictionary. And the space complexity is going to be bound to the length of our logger object. And that'll do it for LeetCode 359.